99% of traders lose because they only trade technical analysis. They look for technical patterns like support and resistance or a trend line break, and they expect price to react from these levels. But what they fail to understand is that patterns don't move a market. The markets move because of underlying macro factors that move them. And if you don't use them, you are just trading blind. It's like being in a big city without a map. You are just following the road signs, hoping to end up at your destination. But one day, you will get lost, and that's exactly how it is if you trade without any macro context. Here is my 4-layer market framework that I always use week in and week out to execute my trades. So the first step is always have a macro bias to go long or to go short, and find the pairs that have a fundamental imbalance and stay away from pairs that have a neutral bias. So after having a macro bias, I want to align the trend of the higher time frames like the weekly and the daily with the macro bias. So for example, if I have EURUSD that has a bullish macro bias, I want to make sure that EURUSD has a weekly uptrend and a daily uptrend. And after aligning the macro bias with the higher time frame daily and weekly trend, I want to look for institutional buy and sell zones by using supply and demand. And then I will just set my supply and demand zones, and I will wait for price to come in these levels to execute my trades. Every Sunday before analyzing 28 random markets, I always take a look at my fundamental dashboard. Now this dashboard tells us which pairs have a fundamental bullish bias, neutral bias, and a fundamental bearish bias, and it does this by looking at every macro factor that can impact a market. It will look at the yield bias, the trend even, seasonality, COT, GDP, and much more. It looks at 18 macro vectors, and when 14 out of 18 markets vectors align, it will give us a bullish or a bearish bias, right? And then after I have my biases, I will make a watch list. I will make a bullish watch list and a bearish watch list, and then I will just ignore the neutral bias pairs, and that way I don't have to analyze 28 random markets. I can just focus on pairs that have a fundamental imbalance. And using this exact system, I was able to get multiple prop firm certificates with multiple firms, and I also received multiple payouts from these different firms. But not only me, even my students like Matisse, Sana, and Ryan all were able to get funded and get payouts with these firms, and many more. Now you understand my framework. Let's do a real-time analysis of the Aussie NZD market. Alright, so the first step is, as always, what is my macro bias on this pair, the Aussie NZD pair. Let's take a look at my yield or at my fundamental dashboard, and as we can see right here, the Aussie NZD has a bullish bias, so I'm looking to go long on this Aussie NZD pair. So the macro bias is bullish. I'll make it in green also. So we are looking for longs on this pair, and then after I have my bias, I want to align the technicals, starting with the weekly trend first. And let's take a look at what the trend of the Aussie NZD is telling us in this point of time. So it's clearly making higher high structures. Let me check. It's making higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs. So this market is clearly a bullish market, making higher highs. So that's a higher high. So it's making higher high structures and higher low structure. So this market is undeniably a bullish market on the weekly time frame. Let's delete this first. So we have the macro bias that's in our favor, going bullish, and we have the weekly trend also bullish. So that's a good sign to go long on this specific market. So I'll make it in green also. And then after aligning my weekly trend with the macro, I want to take a look at what the daily trend is saying. I will open the daily charts on Aussie NZD. And it also looks like it is making higher high structures. So it's going like this, up, down, up, down, up. So it also seems very obvious that this market is making higher highs and higher low structures over the last couple of weeks. So this market is also a daily uptrend or a daily bullish market. So daily trend is also bullish. So now you got three things already aligning with our macro bias. That's a very good sign. And now after I have the macro bias, the trend, I want to look for entries to go long on this market, and always enter my trades on the daily or the 4-hour chart. But let's take a look at the daily chart first, if you find any demand levels here. Let me take a look, and as I always do, is I always start at current price, I go down like this, and I find a first explosive leg out. Here we have explosive leg out, followed by indecisive candles and a big explosive leg in candle, making this a drop with two basing candles and a rally. So I'm going to highlight this demand level as a potential long opportunity once price comes back into that demand level. So this is my daily demand level. This is daily demand level. Is there also any weekly demand level? No, it's a week over week on the weekly. There's also 4-hour demand level. Yes, so it's a 4-hour demand level covered by the higher time frame, the daily time frame. So once price comes back in this demand level and the macro stays bullish, that's very important, then I will be looking to go long on this Aussie NZD pair. So going back to the checklist, we have a daily demand level. I'll make it in green also. And is this a potential trade? The answer is a very obvious yes. And why is that the case? It's because we literally have every framework or layer in order, right? So we have a macro bias pointing bullish, trend pointing bullish, trend of daily pointing bullish, demand level. So it's all aligning to go long on this pair. So once price comes back into this demand level, I'll be long the Aussie NZD if we stay bullish. The problem most retail traders face is they will obsess over their entries and over finding technical patterns. But when they do this, they are neglecting the bigger picture, the macro drivers of the markets. And the real edge in trading comes from understanding the fundamental imbalance in the markets is, so you can time your entries, aligning yourself with the macro. If you want free weekly macro breakdowns, I'll put the link to my free Telegram in the captions below. So hope to see you there, and ciao.